fuel of the heart of the wali, which is sincerity. And what begets sincerity? Like, what is the fuel of sincerity? And we find from this that, in summary, you could say the fuel is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. This Ramadan series has been about these stories of the Awliya, and just to go over it again, the wali, it comes from the word protection and guardianship, and the wali is somebody who guarded what Allah has made us guard, or has obligated us to guard, or commissioned us to guard, which is our souls, His law, other people's rights, His rights, and whoever guards them well, Allah reciprocates that by guarding him. And wilaya is the concept, and wali is the person who attains this. Now, we can speculatively say someone attained that because there are signs of wilaya. There are indicators of wilaya. Essentially, they go above and beyond what is necessary in Islam. We know that there are certain things forbidden from us to do, other things obligatory upon us, and the wali is somebody who goes above and beyond. And there are other signs. His dua is answered, for example. He's inspired. He has, as is the meaning of the Prophet saying, or Allah saying in this hadith Qudsi, I'm his hearing with which he hears, his seeing with which he sees, meaning that he's inspired. We all hear the same thing, but he understands it better. We all see the same thing, he analyzes it more deeper than us. So that's the idea of the wali and wilaya as the goal of a believer. And one of the best ways to make us love this concept is what Abu Hanifa said, Al-qasasu ahabbu ilayya min al-fiqh. Stories are far more beloved to me than fiqh, which is jurisprudence. And the reason is that the story is how to correctly apply the jurisprudence. And now today in this session, I want to talk about the fuel of the heart of the wali, which is sincerity. And what begets sincerity? Like, what is the fuel of sincerity? And we find from this that, in summary, you could say the fuel is private ibadah. I'm going to read you a couple stories here. The first one is from Abdurrahman ibn Abi Layla. Look at how these awliya of the past, well, past and present, it's the same concept. How did they used to do their ibadah? He says, Kana yusalli al-layl. He used to pray at night in his house. But where would he pray? He would always pray right next to his bed. بجانب فراشه فإذا دخل عليه أحد قطع صلاته ودخل فراشه. Every time that someone would come in on him, he would hurry up, finish his prayer, and come right back into bed. So that people don't always say, oh, he's praying. In fact, one of them, maybe he had a roommate or something, said, هذا لا يفتر من النوم. He's always sleeping, this one. غالب وقته على فراشه. Every time I walk in on him, he's laying down, sleeping in his bed. So وما علموا أنه يصلي ويخفي ذلك عليهم. They never knew that he was actually always in salah, but he prayed next to his bed so that people don't know that he prayed. And people lived in big homes with a lot of people in them. And so it took some of these little techniques to keep their ibadah secret. And we're going to see here a saying from one of the Salaf as well, that none of the Sahaba ever did publicly what they could have done privately. And we're going to see another story from the Sahaba Abu Umam al-Bahili, where he finds a man weeping in dua in the masjid, and he nudges him and he says, in your house is better, these kinds of things. Why? Because this is where you develop your connection to your Creator. You develop your relationship with someone when you do things in private. When it's always in public, people are watching you, developing an impression, and that influences you. Let's take a look at this story. Hamza ibn Dahqan. جاء رجل يقال له حمزة ibn Dahqan. He comes to Bishr al-Hafi. He comes to the famous Bishr al-Hafi, and he says to him, فقال أحب أن أخلو معك يوما. He said, I want to spend a whole day with you. And this is actually a tradition where you spend a full day with your Sheikh. I remember Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad mentioned he spent a full day with his Sheikh Ahmed Al-Habib Ahmed Mashur Al-Haddad. And Al-Habib Ahmed at that time was like in his 70s. And Abdul Hakim Murad was in his 20s, and he said, I couldn't keep up with him. We woke up at like 3:30 a.m., tahajjud, the morning routine, short break, all the way until the middle of the night. I could not keep up with the day, like dozing off. Abdullah bin Abbas, similar thing. He did this with the Prophet ﷺ when he slept in Maymuna's house, because Maymuna was his aunt. So he could be there. And he was a youth, and that's his aunt. So he could sleep over. And he saw the Prophet's tahajjud routine, how the Prophet would wake up, rub the sleep off his face, use the miswak, recite the last 10 verses of Ali Imran, then make wudu, then do 2 short rak'ahs, and then long tahajjud rak'ahs, and then witr. And that's the sunnah of tahajjud, is to start with 2 short rak'ahs, and then to do however long you want to do them, and then do witr, then lay down again a little bit, and then pray fajr. But let's see what happens here. He wants to go with Bishr al-Hafi, and Bishr then, he accepts him, and they go to the masjid, and he begins to do some nafila, and he prays some rak'at. Nafila is extra acts of worship that don't have a specific name to it or a specific form to it. It's just extra worship. So he's praying 2 rak'ahs, and he says, I hear him saying, oh Allah, you know that not being known, adhul meaning here adam al-shuhra, not being known is more beloved to me than being known. So he said, at that point, I understood that he accepted me to be around him out of manners, but he in fact does not want to be someone followed or known. So I left him. And these stories, we're getting them from Bahr al-Dumu' and the different books of Ibn al-Jawzi, and also the books of Al-Dhahabi. We have a nice long section on Abdul Qadir al-Jailani coming up. That's all going to be from Al-Dhahabi. Let's take another look at this. This one was an amazing one. The famous scholar Al-Mawardi, his story with ikhlas, sincerity. He says that he came and he had one of his relatives with him. الإمام الواردي في قصة الإخلاص في تصنيف الكتب فقد ألف المؤلفات في التفسير والفقه وغير ذلك ولم يظهر شيء في حياته. None of his books were published in his own life. ولما دنت وفاته قال لشخص يثق به. He told a trusted person. He said, I'm on my deathbed now. There are books in such and such a place, and they're all my books, and I never published them. I didn't want to publish them until I know if Allah is accepting my sincerity or not. So he says, if I squeeze your hand, take the books and discard them completely. That means that my sincerity was it. Why? Because people on their deathbed, the pains of death begin to, the veils start to come down, and they could start seeing things of the other world. So you're either going to see something bad or something good. So if I squeeze your hand, that means I wasn't accepted with Allah, and my books won't be accepted. But if I open my hand, then that means that I do see something good, and I will be accepted with Allah and publish my books. So he says, Alqiha fi Dijla, throw it in the river in the middle of the night. However, if I open my hand, فَعْلَمْ أَنِّي ظَفِرْتُ, then I've been successful and accepted. وأرجوه من النية بما أرجوه من النية الخالصة فلما حضرته الوفاة. Finally, when death came to him, they saw him opening his hand. So then he took his books and he published them. So again, this issue of private ibadah, we're gonna discuss it again because it's so important. And if somebody wants to have a light in his heart and he wants to have depth to his spirituality and his nearness to Allah Ta'ala, then the solution for that, or the key to that, and the fuel for that, is ibadah in private. Sallallahu Alaihi Muhammad wa alihi wa sallam. If you like these videos, you can catch more of them at Safina Society's YouTube channel, and you could study with us online at arcview.org.